sound system 2014 that we just installed. To turn it on, we do just as we did before. There's the key in the back of the room. You just flip it to the right. And there's walk-in space behind if you want to walk back there as well. With the system, it's maybe important to understand that there's in essence two boards. Okay, this is just for music. For speech mics, everything is coming right through here. Now, we don't want to mess with the front of this, that would ruin our warranty. So, the idea is this is fairly automatic. If you want to make adjustments, we can make adjustments on the iPad. We have these two apps that we want to use for sound. This one is for music, this one is for the speech mic. So let me pull up the iViewer Lite. By speech mics, we mean we have the Priest Wireless Lavalier 2, which is the clip-on for Deacon or other celebrant, Handheld 1, Handheld 2, the Cantor Electron, and then the Ambo. You might see the page. This is actually already booted up and ready to go in wireless controls, but when you get to the iViewer Lite, it might look like this. This is the main page within the iViewer Lite. So then you have the option of wireless controls, narthex controls, or reset controls. So the narthex being that out in the hallway we have controls right from the iPad as well. So then you'd want to be in the wireless controls page and you're set to go. The top is in essence what we referred to before as unity. That's about where we want to be. For a little bit of a lighter mass, say for 730, you want to grab from, well, let's see if it works for me, just underneath the red line. For 730, I have it about -4, and maybe the Priests at about -2 to start. And that feels about right. For a funeral, you might want to drop the ambo even a little bit more. For 9:30 though, or 11:30, you could have the ambo almost at 0, and then the Priest at 0, and everything else at 0. So here's your wireless controls page. No need to do too much with it. If you hear maybe some feedback from the ambo or the alt or something, it actually could be that they're bleeding, the sound's bleeding into the music mic. So I'll show you where to mute the music mics, and I would actually recommend that if you hear feedback as opposed to just muting one of these mics. Okay. So now with looking at the music board, let's actually go to the board first and then we'll go to the app. Okay, so again, everything's on. The way it looks now, we see we have the first 4 channels muted, as well we have the general mute, all right? We have 16 channels. There are, down by the music area, there's a snake box with exactly 16 inputs. Corresponds 1 there is 1 here, 2 there is 2 here, so on and so forth, okay? Now, when you're setting things up, let's just pull everything down so we can start more or less from scratch. Here's your basic master over here on the right side, right? And again, when we pull it up, we want to basically go to 0, or what we call unity. Here's a really important thing with this board that we haven't had to do before. When you're mixing everything, right now everything is going through LR, left to right. We need it to go through mix 1. Everything should be mixed through mix 1. It's the first blue button here at the top. I suppose you might have it set up to where you can distribute the sound in various ways if you wanted to use these others. We don't use it that way. We just need to have everything go through mix 1, though that's how this is wired. Okay? So we have our master up, and when I press mix 1, all these other faders came up. A lot of them are at 0 already. Typically, we've been using channels 1 and 2 for choir mics. Let's keep it that way. It's nice just to be uniform across the board. So again, pull it to unity. When you set it, if we look here, you can select the channel by pressing the green SEL button, and it lights up. So right now we're at channel 1, we've selected it, and if you look at the screen, it shows you what your gain is for that channel. Right now our gain is 37 decibels. So if you want to adjust the gain, here's our main gain up here. You can turn it. It's just a knob. numbers are lowering right now, I'm turning to the left, or you can go up and the numbers are going higher. All right. For choir, about 36 to 39 is probably pretty good. So you're gonna make sure these guys are unmuted before you begin. If you feel the need to mute, I might suggest just pressing that general mute button. That takes care of everything music-wise. I don't see why we would necessarily need to do one and not another. So just go ahead and press the general mute button. That takes care of everything. If like I said, you hear feedback from the altar, just go ahead and press that guy. All right, and you might not hear the ring as much as you did. Now, here's where it gets kind of fancy, but actually kind of nice and simple. We have a scenes button, which basically it has some saved settings for us. So if I press the scenes button, it's to the right here, one of these gray buttons, second from the bottom. Scenes is highlighted, and if you can see the screen, we have a few different settings. First is it says Xmas 2 stereo, second is 1223, 3 large choir, 4 Spanish mass, and 5 small ensemble. So if I press number 3, large choir, you see it's kind of highlighted there. We press recall, recall scene, continue, yes, and look what happens at the board. It pulled up the settings that we typically use for, say, a 9:30 Mass. We use 1 and 2 for the choir mics, we use 5 for violin, flute, instrument, other instrument, and then we use 8 for piano. So if I were to go back to the screen, and we remember we're in the scenes setting. So to get back to our general screen where we can see what's happening for each individual channel, press processing at the top, green button. Here we have we're looking at channel 1 selected right now. If I see channel 2, okay, channel 2 is selected and it's also at 38 decibels. Let me go to channel 5, that's the other one that we're using. Okay, channel 5 at about 20 decibels for violin, sure, we don't want that to be as much as the vocals, right? 8 piano, also at 20 decibels. You think, well, maybe the piano is loud enough, sure, but it's nice to have a little bit of something mixing in with everything. Remember, those nearest the piano can hear it, sure, but across the other side of the church, they might want a little something as well. So to have it just come through a little bit through the speakers might be a help, okay? So with this, you should be able to have sound, okay? Again, to show you the scenes, and we'll press something else. If we were to go to number 5, small ensemble, and recall, and then recall scene, continue, yes. This pulls up how we're setting up for maybe a small ensemble such as cantors or schola. Basically just about 2 to 6 singers that are not on the risers. And what we're using for them, plugging in channels 3 and 4, 2 of the Sennheiser mics as opposed to the choir mics, plugged in 3 and 4. And the gain pretty high actually. We found that there's not so much feedback in using these mics. It's not quite as wide as what the choir mics are, but this works for a nice balance of sound. And then again, we have channel 5 for violin or flute and channel 8 for piano. But the difference is we're using 3 and 4 with the Sennheiser mics. Okay. We also have a setting for Spanish mass. If we press that, recall scene, continue, and this pulls up what the Spanish is using: 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. For guitars, for other vocals that the Spanish mass is using. Let's go to the iPad. Most of us will probably be using adjusting music from the iPad. So again, the apps that we use for sound can be found on basically the 3rd page. It's the last page within our iPad. Remember, iViewer Lite was for the speech mics. The QPad is for music. You're going to come up to this demo other. You want to press other. You want to connect. Fine. Yes, that's the number. Let's go ahead and connect. Please wait. Okay, so this should look about how our board looks. On the board, 1 and 2 are muted. 1 and 2 are muted on the app. We have, 7 muted. 7 is muted on the app. So if I press 7 on the board, it's unmuted on the app. This is to say you don't need to do both mixing on the board and on the app. one or the other, they communicate together. In fact, if you can see this, let's watch this. This is a neat little trick. I will adjust 1 and 2. Let me unmute. Let me adjust 2, and you'll see the fader. It's like magic. Okay, you see it going up and down. Now, the first time I tried pressing it, it didn't work for me right away because it was the app was reading LR. Again, we have to have everything go through mix 1. It looks similar to what it does on the board. It's on the right. Okay. To get to the channels, you only see 1 through 8 here. You can just scroll to the right, and then you can find your other channels. So it's pretty similar. If you want to highlight a particular channel, just click on it, and then here it shows you what's happening for that individual channel. So here's your gain on the app. To do this, to adjust it, I'm sure it's difficult to see with my finger in the way, but you just, it's a horizontal slide basically, left, right. Most mics need this 48 volt. It should already be set, but if it's not, that could be also a potential problem as to why you're not hearing sound. Now, we would not have, if we left it like this, we would not have any sound right away because, again, if you look over here, this is muted. You need to unmute that or mute it, depending on what your needs are. And then make sure, I believe, especially for the Sennheiser mics, that this green on button needs to be on, and in some cases the yellow pre button needs to be on to get sound as well. So I don't think it does any harm if you have the pre button on, at least not that I've found with the way we use it. So. Why don't we go down and take a look at the setup down at the bottom. In terms of proper mic technique, a couple things to know. If you have a handheld, and every time you grab a handheld, check the battery. This actually has 1 battery level, so we need to change it. You can see it right here. There's a screen.
Move it back a little bit.
Okay. And when you hold this, people have a tendency, even here is a little bit too far. These are meant to be up close. Hold it closer than you think. Encourage others who grab the mic, because it's usually not you, but maybe somebody who's just coming into the church or something else, so hold it kind of close, all right? It does need to be close. These mics are designed to be swallowed, and they work well that way. So about an inch or something, maybe away, all right? I asked them to give a little space. They really want it to be up and close, but if it's that close here, it'll be a little too boomy, so about an inch. You want the mic to basically be pointing at your voice. I don't know if you can hear what's happening with the mic. You can hear it, but it's a really broad and thinning sound. Grab from the back of the neck, just pull down like this. It'll actually be warmer, it'll round out a little bit. And you want to be almost at the wood. You're going to hear a lot of echo when you're on the altar. It's balancing a little bit more right here, and also you have the reflection of the amber, the wood on the amber itself. It might not be as heard in the back, so just remember that. But about 6 to 8 inches, something like this, even if you're singing. That's for the amber that's selected, the same kind of mic, which is it's a very close, it's a tight circle in terms of the sound and how it's distributed. So it's a tight pattern meant to be, just set directly in. The way it's set up now, this would be for a small ensemble. I have 3 chairs, you might have 3 cantors, and then I've set up 2 mics. Between 2 and 6 cantors, I would still just leave the 2 mics and have people just kind of, if you have 6 people, just have 3 stand around either side, all right? So we have the 2 mics there. Make sure when you're setting up that you've got enough space between the chairs and the mics for the singers. And then we have, this is for our instrument, if we need an instrument. And you kind of want the mic, as you see, tilted more or less kind of down as it would be going into the sound source for whether it be the violin or the flute, all right? Have the cables, there's only so much space and you gotta have cables running, but see if you can kind of get them out of the way. I've in this case just put them under the middle chair and assuming that they'll stand to one side or the other, and I've actually taken one of the Velcro pieces and just kind of wrapped them all together. And I've put the box underneath the one chair. And here's what we have. Again, we have the two mics. They're plugged in 3 and 4. As you're looking at them from, as you're looking at the singers towards the altar, 3 is the left and 4 is the right. Okay, 5 is the instrument, 8 is the piano. Okay, tucked right under there. So see if you can get it out of the way. Also, though, you want to make sure if you're setting up that we can leave the risers here. For right now, we have the organ in back. Just make sure that there's a little bit of the space so the organist can get by, which I can slide. Okay. Make sure when you plug mics in, plug mics out, general mute button on the app. Okay. This is nice and convenient for us to be able to not have sound going on as people are coming in, this kind of thing. You can leave the mute on until just before Mass. Just remember to turn it off. Okay. So that's the setup for small ensemble or cantors, funerals, this kind of thing. Here's our setup for what would look like for 9:30, or if you had a choir. Notice I still have the mics in an upright position. I have this, I want to show you, I would suggest moving it this way. So, you know, when we typically have it for the choir, obviously the neck would be pointed down a little bit, but as soon as we pick this up and start adjusting, and then I can just imagine going back to a wall and suddenly the mic finds itself in the brick wall. We don't want that, all right? When you do move the mics in a position, you want them about pointing at the middle row. Something like that. Wherever your middle row is at about that level. I have the mics fairly close, you know, just a foot or two apart from where that singer is. And again, the dispersion of the sound is pretty wide. So even if a singer is here or here, they very well be picked up. Now, if you do have people on the floor, you'll need to move the mics back a little bit. For children's choir, you'll want them pretty close. So that's the idea. Again, we have our instrument mic set up. And again, I just tried to tidy it up here. I moved the box out a little bit so it's not right against where people's feet are, especially if we have people standing there. For the remainder of this cord, there's a thin wires we have to be careful of. There's a Velcro piece so we can keep it tied when it's just sitting there. That would be helpful. That's set up for 9:30 or when you have a choir. So now we just need to shut down once your Mass is ended. It's okay to leave it on through Sunday morning, but after the vigil, Saturday night, and after Sunday night, we'll shut down. And obviously, if we have a funeral, other special services and isolated events. It's good to know I've set some 9-volt batteries right here for the handheld should you need it. If you need to replace it, you just untwist, and there's our 9-volt back there. Shutting down the system, yes, everything is connected to the key again, but our board, it's like a computer, so we need to treat it kindly and it needs a little more special care. So what we do to shut down, right now it's in the scenes screen, we want to go to the home screen. It's the top gray button. And we also here have the top left home tab, which is already selected for us. It might look like this or something, but we want it to be at the home tab. And on the home tab, there's a red button that says shut down. We'll click that. Shut down the desk, continue, yes. Shutting down. It is now safe to turn off your Q16. Okay. So now we'll flip the switch. Now it's okay to shut everything down. We'll turn it to the left. I want to point out that even though we did this, if you look at the top of the rack, you'll see that it looks like, wait, everything's still on. That's fine. Those are just power adapters in essence. Where we put the iPad, return it, you have this plug hanging down actually from one of those power sources, and you can plug it in. And we just set it right on top of the Electrosonics, the speech mics board. Hope that helps.